Detroit's identity runs deep. The thunder of the V8, the pulse of Motown, the precision of the assembly line. But beneath the bankruptcy headlines and downtown revivals, beyond the gleaming skyscrapers and storied neighborhoods, a different kind of engine is running. This engine doesn't run on gasoline. It runs on equity. It runs on black, high-octane female capital. We're not talking about social media wealth. We're talking about women commanding municipal bond portfolios worth billions. Women who have stood before global investors and refuse to be undervalued. Women whose names are spoken in boardrooms from Wall Street to Japan, not as guests, but as guardians of Michigan's economic future. From the inheritors of Motown's legacy to the quiet power brokers living in the suburbs, these figures have shaped Detroit's financial landscape with precision and purpose. These are the industry titans, the retail disruptors, the architects of capital, operating at a level most headlines never reach. This is the countdown of the wealthiest black women in Detroit. Number 8, Rachel Allen, the architect of infrastructure. Most people build businesses. Rachel Allen builds the systems that make businesses possible in the first place. She is the founder of the Operations School, a venture that sits at the critical crossroads of logistics, process, and black business scaling. In a city that invented the modern assembly line, Allen recognized that the modern black entrepreneur was not failing for lack of passion or talent. They were failing for lack of process. She identified that gap and turned it into a business worth millions. Here is what separates Allen from a typical entrepreneur. She did not wait for venture capital. She did not fly to San Francisco and pitch to a room full of people who had never set foot in Detroit. She invested over $200,000 of her own money to get started. In a city still clawing its way back from one of the largest municipal bankruptcies in American history, that was not simply a business decision. It was an act of faith. And that faith paid off in spectacular fashion when Allen became the only black woman in the entire state of Michigan to secure a $2.8 million Small Business Support Hubs grant from the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. But here is the real power move that most people miss. Once the empire was built, Allen stepped back from daily operations and installed a former Chase Bank vice president to run the machine. That is not retreat. That is leverage. That is what it looks like when a founder evolves into an executive. She proved that her organization had evolved from a hustle into a true institution capable of running without her hands on the wheel every single day. Her net worth lives in the intellectual equity of what she has built, but her true currency is influence. In Detroit, if you want to know how a small business becomes a corporation, there is one name you call: Rachel Allen. Number 7, Ebony Cochran, the franchise queen. If Rachel Allen is the architect drawing the blueprints, Ebony Cochran is the one pouring the foundation and laying every brick. Her wealth is built on something as unglamorous and as powerful as anything you will find in this city: pizza. Cochran made history as the first African-American woman to own a Little Caesars franchise in the state of Michigan. And in Detroit, that is not a footnote. That is a headline. Little Caesars was born in this city. The Ellis family built their sports empire on the back of those hot and ready boxes and used that capital to own arenas, hockey teams, and baseball stadiums. For a black woman to buy into that ownership circle in the company's own hometown was a statement that echoed far beyond the carryout window. Franchising is one of the most capital-intensive games in all of business. You need liquidity, you need credit, and you need the kind of nerve that most people simply do not have. Cochran had all three. She bought a cash-flowing asset in a high-traffic market, and then she took those profits and reinvested them into something even bigger. Her Detroit Wealth Club headquarters is a 7,300 square foot facility on the city's east side. She did not rent it. She renovated it with $155,000 of her own cash combined with grants. That shift from tenant to landlord is one of the most critical transitions in the entire Black Wealth playbook, and Cochran made it look intentional because it absolutely was. Her income flows from multiple streams simultaneously: franchise revenue, consultancy fees, and a coaching platform where she teaches exactly what she does in real time. That flywheel keeps spinning, and every revolution adds another layer to her growing net worth. No inheritance, no trust fund, no safety net handed to her by someone else, just discipline, credit, and the audacity to own something in a system that was never designed to include her. Number 6, Nailah Ellis, the manufacturing mogul. Detroit is a manufacturing city. That identity runs so deep it is practically written into the DNA of everyone born here. Nailah Ellis is the living proof that the spirit of the assembly line never left. It just changed what it was building. She is the founder of Ellis Island Tea, the largest black woman-owned beverage company in the entire United States. She did not start with a factory or a venture capital check or a team of consultants. She started with a cooler and a family recipe. The recipe came from her great-grandfather, Cyril Ellis, a chef who worked aboard the Black Star Line, Marcus Garvey's legendary shipping company. That heritage is not just sentimental detail. It connects Ellis to a lineage of Pan-African economic independence that stretches back over a century. She began selling tea out of the trunk of her car, fighting through a saturated market and the deep skepticism of distributors who could not imagine a black woman competing at serious scale. Then she scaled anyway, because that is what Detroit women do. She moved from the trunk of a car to the shelves of Whole Foods, Target, and Sam's Club. But the real turning point in her wealth trajectory came when Ellis stopped relying on third-party manufacturers who had no investment in the quality of her product, and built her own production facility right here in Detroit. Owning your manufacturing is the holy grail of capitalism for a product company. It means you control the margins, the quality, and the timeline. Nobody can hold your product hostage or squeeze your profits from below. When she secured $1.85 million in funding and landed a high-profile investment from comedian and business mogul Kevin Hart, the valuation of her company climbed in ways that go far beyond the dollar amount of the check. Celebrity capital is marketing capital. The two cannot be separated. With a net worth estimated around $5 million, Ellis is still in the early chapters of her story. The beverage industry rewards exits at massive multiples, and Nailah Ellis is sitting on a dynasty that just happens to be disguised as a tea company. Number 5. Robin Terry, the guardian of the legacy. In Detroit, culture is not just currency, it is collateral. It is the kind of asset that appreciates over decades and cannot be replicated anywhere else on Earth. And nobody holds more cultural collateral in this city than Robin Terry. She is the chairwoman and CEO of the Motown Museum, the official steward of the most recognized and most beloved sound in the history of American music. And Terry is not an outside hire brought in to manage someone else's legacy. She is bloodline. She is the grandniece of Berry Gordy, the man who built Motown Records from a modest two-story house on West Grand Boulevard into a global empire that changed the entire soundtrack of the 20th century. Her grandmother, Esther Gordy Edwards, had the rare foresight to preserve that house when the label relocated to Los Angeles decades ago. While the business left Detroit, the history stayed behind. And Robin Terry controls the physical manifestation of that irreplaceable history. Her wealth profile cannot be measured in salary alone. Her direct compensation from the museum sits in a range that appears modest for someone operating at her level. But that is not where her power lives. Her power lives in the $55 million expansion project she is currently steering, a full-scale transformation of the museum block into a world-class tourism campus backed by the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation, the Kresge Foundation, and the government of the state of Michigan itself. In the world of high-end nonprofits, the CEO functions less like a charity director and more like an investment banker. You raise capital, you manage massive asset growth, and you build a brand that generates cultural and economic revenue for generations. Under Terry's leadership, the museum's total assets have grown to over $55 million. She is not just preserving a legacy, she is multiplying it and anchoring it permanently to this city. In Detroit, your last name can be your most valuable asset of all. Robin Terry proves that an heir who builds is worth 100 times more than an heir who simply inherits and coasts. Number 4, Melissa Butler, the beauty disruptor. If you want to find the face of new money in Detroit, look no further than Melissa Butler. She is the founder and CEO of the Lip Bar, and she has accomplished something that most entrepreneurs spend their entire careers dreaming about. She took a public, televised rejection from the most famous investor show in the world and converted it into rocket fuel for an empire. The investors on Shark Tank looked her in the eye and told her that her bold, colorful lipsticks had no market, that the product was not serious, that there was no real future in what she was trying to build. She walked out of that studio without a deal and without an apology, and then she went to work proving every single one of them catastrophically wrong. Butler quit a career on Wall Street and moved back to Detroit to make lipstick in her kitchen. From the outside, that decision looked reckless and impulsive. From the inside, it was pure, calculated strategy. She understood something fundamental that the Shark Tank panel completely missed. The black consumer dollar is not a niche market. It is an enormous, underserved, and deeply loyal market that the legacy beauty industry had been ignoring for decades. The Lip Bar became the largest black-owned makeup brand carried at Target stores nationwide. It spread to Walmart, CVS, and beyond. Butler raised over $15.9 million in venture capital, including a $6.7 million Series A round, while carefully maintaining significant ownership equity throughout the process. Beauty brands at this scale, with this level of retail distribution and cultural momentum, attract acquisition interest from the giants. L'Oreal, Estee Lauder, and Ulta Beauty do not ignore category leaders. When that exit eventually arrives, Melissa Butler's equity stake in the Lip Bar has the potential to completely rewrite the wealth map of this entire city. She also founded Boss Ventures, placing herself on the capital side of the table rather than just the brand side. Melissa Butler is not simply a CEO. She is a case study in what happens when the establishment underestimates a black woman from Detroit and she refuses to let them be right. Number 3, Iris Taylor and the corporate matriarchs. There is a tier of black women in Detroit whose wealth operates at a frequency most people cannot even hear. It does not trend on social media, it does not get featured in celebrity real estate coverage, but it moves the city. We call them the corporate matriarchs, and the standard bearer of this generation is Dr. Iris Taylor. As the former president and chief executive officer of Detroit Receiving Hospital, one of the most critical and high-volume trauma centers in the entire country, Taylor ran a multi-billion-dollar healthcare institution with thousands of employees and a mission that touched the lives of hundreds of thousands of Detroiters every single year. Hospital chief executives in major metropolitan areas do not earn modest salaries. They command total compensation packages deep in the 7-figure range, supplemented by board fees, consulting arrangements, and investment returns accumulated over decades of disciplined wealth management. But Dr. Taylor's real wealth is not in her salary history. It is in her boardroom portfolio. She has served on the board of the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago Detroit branch. Pause and let that register. You are not just a doctor or a hospital administrator at that point. You are a monetary policy architect for an entire region. You understand where the economy is moving before the newspapers can report it and before most investors can react. That is information wealth of the highest order, and information wealth compounds faster than nearly anything else available. Alongside Taylor, the matriarch class includes indispensable figures like Faye Nelson, who oversaw the billion-dollar physical transformation of Detroit's waterfront through the Riverfront Conservancy. These women are called in when a city needs surgery, not cosmetic surgery, not marketing surgery, but deep, structural, lasting surgery. Their net worths are built on decades of executive compensation, pension accumulation, and the kind of patient long-term investing that never makes headlines but absolutely and consistently builds generational fortunes. They live in Palmer Woods and the Gold Coast. They are the bedrock of Detroit's black upper class, and this city does not function at the level it does without them. Number 2, Carla Walker-Miller, the energy titan. Now we step into the true stratosphere of Detroit black female wealth. The woman holding the number 2 position is not simply participating in the regional economy. She is literally responsible for keeping it powered. Carla Walker-Miller is the founder and CEO of Walker-Miller Energy Services, and she has constructed something that the vast majority of people in this city have never heard of, and almost every single one of them depends on daily. Her company is a large-scale engineering and energy efficiency firm that holds direct contracts with the biggest utility providers in Michigan, DTE Energy, and Consumers Energy. These are not startup pilot programs or small partnership agreements. These are major government-adjacent infrastructure contracts, and in the energy sector, the dollar figures attached to them are staggering. Walker-Miller Energy Services generated nearly $70 million in revenue in a single year. Let that number sit with you for a moment. $70 million flowing through a company built from the ground up by a Black woman from Detroit. The enterprise value of a business operating at that revenue level, particularly one carrying the contracting advantages that come with certified minority and woman-owned status, sits comfortably and conservatively in the mid-8 to 9-figure range. And Carla Walker-Miller owns it outright. She founded the company in the year 2000, long before green energy became a corporate trend, long before decarbonization was something utilities put in their annual reports, and long before energy efficiency was something consumers understood or demanded. She positioned herself as the essential and irreplaceable bridge between the old fossil fuel infrastructure economy and the new electrified future that was coming, whether anyone was ready or not. She also became the first Black-owned company in the entire state of Michigan to earn a certified B Corporation designation, which means she is legally obligated to weigh social impact alongside financial profit in every major decision. She employs over 100 people, the majority of them Black Detroiters, creating durable pathways into a high-paying technical industry that has historically excluded them at every level. Walker-Miller does not make music, she does not sell sneakers or launch a skincare line. She wins engineering contracts and powers an entire region's quality of life. That is industrial wealth. That is the kind of generational, compounding, unshakable wealth that lasts. She is the woman who keeps the lights on across Michigan, and she collects a check every single time someone flips a switch. Number 1, Suzanne Shank, the Wall Street Queen of Detroit. There is rich, there is wealthy, and then there is the entirely separate category that Suzanne Shank occupies by herself. She is the president, CEO, and co-founder of Siebert Williams Shank & Company. And before you move past that name, you need to fully understand what that firm actually does and the scale at which it operates. It is the top-ranked minority and woman-owned investment banking firm in the United States of America. Not in Michigan, not in the Midwest, not in the Great Lakes region, in the entire country. Shank lives in Detroit. But she plays her game on a stage that most people never even see from the outside. Municipal bonds. When New York City needs to finance a major infrastructure project, when the state of California needs to fund its public school system, when the city of Detroit itself needed to restructure and escape the largest municipal bankruptcy in American history, investment banks stepped in to underwrite that debt. Shank's firm has been a central player in transactions totaling over $700 billion in aggregate deal value. That is not a rounding error. That is not an exaggeration. $700 billion with a B, managed in significant part from the city of Detroit. She did not stumble into this position through luck or proximity to someone else's power. Shank holds a Wharton MBA and an undergraduate degree in civil engineering. She deliberately combined deep technical knowledge of physical infrastructure with the surgical precision of high finance to create a market position that almost nobody else could replicate. She co-founded the firm alongside the late Muriel Siebert, the first woman to ever own a seat on the New York Stock Exchange, and later completed a transformative merger with the Williams Capital Group to build an institution with reach, reputation, and relationships that span every major financial market in the world. Her personal net worth is a fortress built over decades. Public disclosures show millions in liquid public market holdings, but that represents only the visible fraction of her total wealth picture. The real value sits in her ownership stake in a thriving private investment bank that closes multi-billion-dollar deals on a regular basis. Partners at firms of this caliber earn 8-figure annual incomes. It is entirely reasonable to place Shank's total net worth comfortably in the solid 9-figure range. She is a centimillionaire operating with quiet authority out of a city that most Wall Street insiders would not give a second glance. And that contrast is not accidental. That is the whole point. She does not chase cameras or court celebrity. She does not appear on reality television or get into public disputes. She sits on the boards of rocket companies and CMS Energy. She cuts quiet checks that keep Detroit's most important cultural institutions breathing and growing. She has been named one of the most powerful Black executives on Wall Street and a National Entrepreneur of the Year. And she built every single dollar of it by placing a long, disciplined, visionary bet on the infrastructure of the United States of America. Suzanne Shank is the banker who lends money to entire cities. In the full hierarchy of Detroit's Black wealth, everyone else is designing and constructing the building. Suzanne Shank is the one financing the entire development. From the franchise counters of the East Side to the bond trading desks of downtown, these women have authored a completely new chapter for the Motor City. This is not a story about survival, recovery, or making do with less. It is a story about dominance, ownership, and the kind of institutional power that compounds quietly and pays dividends for generations. They did not wait for the city to recover before they began building their empires. In many cases, they helped build the recovery itself. They faced down racism, sexism, and economic collapse, and they came out holding equity, government contracts, board seats, and financial infrastructure that will outlast any cycle of boom or bust this city has ever endured. Who do you think will be the next billionaire to rise out of the Motor City? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to see where else wealth is quietly reshaping the financial map of this country, click the video on your screen right now.